Hey guys, tonight we journey into a time you've probably romanticized. Castles, gallant knights, and epic quests. But let's press pause on the fantasy. Imagine waking up not to the soft chirp of your phone alarm, but to the scratching of rats inside your straw mattress. The air smells like boiled cabbage and something else. The floor is dirt, literal dirt, and you're pretty sure your blanket has fleas. You are, my friend, in medieval Europe. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive the day. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up before the sun, not because you want to, but because someone's yelling about pigs escaping into the neighbor's field. Your bed is a lumpy sack of straw, most likely shared with siblings or even livestock, and there's a definite chance something just scurried across your leg. Was that a rat? Probably. They're basically roommates at this point. Your room doesn't have windows, just a small hole in the wall stuffed with cloth. No glass, of course. That's a luxury for people who own more than 2 spoons. If you're lucky, you have a thatched roof above your head. If you're not, you've got a leaky ceiling and a muddy puddle forming right next to your pillow. Now, let's talk about the toilet situation. Spoiler, there isn't one. You might have a chamber pot under the bed if you're fancy. If not, it's the outdoors for you. You tiptoe out barefoot into the cold dawn, careful not to step in anything left behind by humans or animals. Your village smells like a fermented mix of animal dung, smoke, rotting food, and unwashed bodies. It's an immersive sensory experience you didn't ask for. You trudge back inside, and your stomach growls, reminding you that it's time to break fast. But first, let's acknowledge something grim. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants got more sleep than we do today, since they followed the sun. But between hunger, cold, and the occasional rat nibbling on your fingers, it's not exactly restorative. Even before breakfast, there's work to do. The cows need milking, firewood must be fetched, and the oven, if your village shares one, has to be stoked with peat or brushwood. Fun fact, in some places, people use dried animal dung as fuel. That's right, you might be cooking breakfast over burning cow poop. Bon appetit. As you get moving, you notice the straw on your floor crunching underfoot. That's not cereal. It's flea shells, mouse droppings, and bits of last night's crumbs. Medieval homes were rarely cleaned beyond the occasional sweeping, and with no real knowledge of germs, people simply accepted filth as part of life. The smell? Just background noise. You're wearing the same clothes you wore yesterday, and the day before, and possibly last month. Laundering means hauling water, heating it over a fire, and scrubbing with lye soap so harsh it gives you chemical burns. So, people washed clothes sparingly and wore layers to cover stains and smells. You might even sleep in your clothes to save time in the morning. After all, who are you trying to impress? Everyone's equally miserable. At this point, your skin itches, probably because of lice. Medieval folks called them body companions, which is a charming euphemism for parasites. Nitpicking, literally picking nits out of hair, was a social bonding activity, like gossiping but itchier. And now that you're awake, smelly, and slightly traumatized, your day has officially begun. There are no weekends, no PTO, and no sick leave. You work because your survival depends on it. But more on that later. Let's not forget, you're also contending with superstitions. If your eye twitches or a raven flies overhead, someone might decide you're cursed. Good luck shaking that rumor in a town of 100 people who think sneezing too often is a sign of sin. And if you're left-handed, yikes. People might genuinely think you're in league with the devil. High five with your right hand, obviously. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some peasants believed that sleeping with garlic around your neck would keep away evil spirits. Others thought stuffing your pillow with rosemary would bring pleasant dreams. You try both. All you get is neck rash and itchy eyes. You finish your morning chores exhausted, itchy, and vaguely cursed. You haven't even eaten yet, but already, it's very clear. You, dear modern human, are not built for this life. You're starving. Understandably. You've been up since before dawn, wrangling goats, chopping wood, and avoiding tetanus via splinters. So, it's finally time for breakfast. Only lower your expectations. On the table, or more likely, the wobbly wooden slab someone once called a table, is a small hunk of coarse, dark bread. It's made from rye, barley, or whatever grain was available last harvest. It's dense, it's chewy, and if it's more than a day old, it doubles as a blunt weapon. You knock on it and it echoes back. That's not a good sign. Next to your bread is a cup of something called small beer. Don't worry, it's not a frat party. This beer has barely any alcohol. It's just safer than water. Why? Because the water in your village likely comes from the same stream where people wash their clothes, empty their chamber pots, and occasionally let animals do their business. The beer is weak, warm, and sour, but it might keep you from getting dysentery. You take a bite of the bread. Something crunches. That's not salt. It's grit from the millstone. Stone ground flour in medieval times meant actual bits of stone ended up in your dough. Over time, this wore down people's teeth like sandpaper. Dentists today can identify medieval skulls just by how smooth the teeth are eroded, not by sugar, but by rocks in their daily bread. If you're lucky, there's a sliver of cheese that smells like it was fermented under a barn. Maybe a few dried peas. An egg? Only if your hen was in the mood. Meat? Ha! You're hilarious. Meat is a luxury for feast days or lords. You are not a lord. You're basically background character number 17 in a grimy BBC drama. And yet, this meal is considered fuel. You need it to survive the labor-intensive hours ahead. But let's pause for a second to appreciate something historians still debate. Were medieval peasants truly undernourished? Or did their simple, unprocessed diets actually give them surprisingly robust health for their station? Records are contradictory. Some indicate they had strong bones and decent teeth. Others show signs of chronic malnutrition, rickets, and stunted growth. Let's say you probably look 12 years old until you're 40. Between bites, you swat away flies. They're everywhere. They live in your house, on your food, on your face. There's no such thing as food safety codes or bug zappers. You get bonus protein with every meal, whether you want it or not. And yes, that thing crawling on your bread? Just wave it away. Or eat it. Honestly, it won't make much difference at this point. Here's a fringe tidbit for your trouble. In some parts of medieval Europe, people believed stale bread had medicinal properties. Leftover loaves were ground into powder and added to herbal potions. Bread was sacred. Bread was life. Bread was also occasionally moldy. Penicillin wouldn't be discovered for centuries, but hey, maybe you're ahead of the curve? You finish eating in silence because breakfast isn't a social hour. It's just another necessity. Conversation is minimal. You speak only when necessary, and even then, you use simple, direct phrases. Modern chit-chat would confuse your neighbors. Ask someone how their weekend was, and they'll stare at you like you've grown a second head. Every day is the same. Work, survive, repeat. The communal atmosphere means privacy is non-existent. You eat beside your family, your neighbors, maybe even the pig that lives in the corner. Yes, pigs often shared living quarters with people. Why? Body heat. Not joking. Winters were brutal, and having a warm animal in the room meant a higher chance of survival. You cuddle up with a snorting, muddy creature and call it comfort. Welcome to medieval co-living. You wipe your mouth with the sleeve of your shirt. because napkins don't exist yet, and glance toward the door. Time to head out, but your stomach still grumbles. One crusty slice of bread and a sip of yeasty barley water isn't exactly brunch. That's okay, though. You'll eat again tonight, if there's anything left. There's a small child nearby gnawing on something. You realize it's a root pulled straight from the earth, probably unwashed. He looks satisfied. Dirt, after all, is just seasoning. And here's the kicker. Breakfast wasn't even considered a real meal in many parts of medieval Europe. In fact, the church often discouraged it, labeling it gluttonous or sinful unless you were old, sick, or a monk with permission. Eating early meant you were weak. So in some villages, you wouldn't eat until midday. That's right, your sad chunk of stale bread might not even exist. You leave your home, your stomach still echoing, and begin the long day ahead. Your breath fogs in the morning air, and your toes are already numb. You still haven't bathed, by the way, but we'll get to that. For now, you start walking down the muddy path, past other villagers who all wear the same expression of exhausted acceptance. This is your life now, and it's only 7 a.m. Your boots squish in the muck as you shuffle along the village path. Except you're not wearing boots. You're wearing what amounts to loosely stitched leather sacks, barely holding your feet together. If you're really unlucky, you're barefoot. Yes, even in winter, because shoes are expensive, and yours fell apart 3 harvests ago. Now, let's address the elephant in the village. You stink. But don't worry, so does everyone else. There is no perfume aisle in the medieval marketplace, and even if there were, you wouldn't be able to afford anything except maybe a handful of dried herbs, which you might hang around your neck in hopes they mask the smell of your armpits and despair. Bathing? Cute idea. Completely impractical. The church has some complicated feelings about it, ranging from vanity to temptation of the flesh. Public bathhouses were popular in earlier centuries, but by the High Middle Ages they were disappearing, partially thanks to plague paranoia and moral policing. And let's not forget, bathing means heating water, and heating water means fuel, and fuel means firewood, and firewood means more work for your already overworked self. So no, you're not getting a warm bubble bath anytime soon. Instead, you occasionally wipe yourself down with a damp cloth. Maybe once a month, you dunk into a nearby river and hope it's not downstream from where someone else is doing laundry, or worse. But you do try. You sprinkle ashes in your hair to absorb grease. You might even chew on mint or parsley to freshen your breath, which is still better than most people, whose mouths smell like a blacksmith's chimney. There's a phrase from the time, "Better to stink of the stable than reek of sin." Comforting, isn't it? Historians still argue whether medieval folks truly avoided bathing altogether, or whether personal hygiene simply looked very different back then. Some accounts suggest noble women bathed monthly, while peasants did so seasonally. Regardless, you are itchy, damp, and perpetually sticky. Your clothes? Not helping. You're wearing a tunic made of rough, undyed wool. It's hot in the summer, freezing in the winter, and always just itchy enough to keep you awake at night. Underwear? That's optimistic. Maybe a linen shift if you're lucky. You haven't washed these garments in weeks, maybe months, because washing them means taking them off, a luxury that leaves you both exposed and freezing. And let's talk about your hat. You probably have some form of head covering, not for fashion but necessity. Hair is rarely washed, lice are abundant, and wearing a hat keeps the worst of the bugs from leaping into someone else's scalp mid-conversation. Sharing lice is the medieval version of giving someone the flu on a crowded train. Quirky tidbit time. In some areas, people believe that shaving the front of your head, yes, like the monks, helps stop lice infestations. Monastic fashion meets pest control. You briefly consider it. Then remember you don't own a mirror or a sharp enough blade. And now for the worst part, your clothes are trying to kill you. Quite literally. Medieval dyes were often made with heavy metals like mercury and lead. Wearing colored clothing. Sure, you look festive, but you also might develop mystery rashes and slow poisoning over time. Of course, you can't afford colored clothes, so you'll just die of exposure and lice instead. As you walk, you start to sweat. Your tunic soaks it up like a sponge, locking in the smell for days. You lift your arms slightly, and the scent of onions and goat punches your own nose. There's a reason medieval people carried pomanders. Tiny scented balls of herbs and spices hung on cords around the neck. Portable air fresheners. You've got a wilted sprig of lavender jammed into your belt and an optimistic attitude. You arrive at your field, already itching and short of breath. And now, you have to work a full day dressed like a walking wool blanket, under the hot sun, or in the freezing wind, or through a light drizzle that will turn your entire outfit into a 20-pound soggy sponge. There are no wardrobe changes, no freshen up breaks. You sweat, freeze, itch, and stink in the same outfit you'll sleep in tonight. Here's a fun fact to brighten your miserable morning. Some upper-class folks believed bathing opened your pores and made you more vulnerable to disease. So they covered their bodies in layers of fabric, convinced that soaking up sweat and grime was actually healthier. That's right, filth was fashion. You bend down to pull weeds and your seam splits. There's no tailoring shop, no quick stitch and go. You'll tie some twine around it and keep going. Sewing is a valuable skill here. So is lowering your standards. By now, your armpits feel like they're on fire. Your boots, leather socks, are soaked through, and your hair is matted with a suspicious mixture of soot and cow dander. But it's not just about comfort. All this grime is dangerous. Infections are common. Lice can lead to trench fever. Fungal rashes spread in the folds of your wool tunic. And if you scratch yourself too hard and break the skin, that's an open invitation for gangrene. Your body is constantly battling invaders, inside and out, and your only defense is to keep working, keep moving, and pray you make it through the day without contracting something. Medieval. By now, your clothes feel like a damp punishment wrapped in sheep's regret. You've got twine holding your tunic together, the collar smells like goat, and there's a tickle in your sock that you're afraid to investigate. But you soldier on because there's no other option. Survival in medieval times doesn't come with coffee breaks or breathable fabrics. And now that you're fully into your workday, let's talk about what work actually means here. Unless you're one of the extremely rare literate elite, maybe a monk, a clerk, or a noble, your job is either brutal, boring, or both. You don't have a career. You have a task that you repeat until your body gives out. You farm, you haul, you scrape, or you serve. If you're in the fields, congratulations. You've just joined 80% of the medieval population. You start by clearing stones from the land, plowing with a wooden hoe, or if you're lucky, a moldboard plow pulled by an ox that resents your existence. The soil is hard, the sun is unforgiving, and the smell of manure fills your lungs like some kind of ironic incense. You pause only to stretch your back, which already feels like it's aged 20 years since breakfast. There's a saying that you suddenly understand on a deeply personal level. Bend your back and fill your sack. The sack, in this case, is full of barley or wheat or turnips, none of which you'll likely get to eat. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had more free time than we do today. Some records suggest they had many religious holidays and breaks between planting and harvest seasons. Others show a grinding, year-round labor cycle that began before sunrise and ended long after dark. The truth? Probably somewhere in the middle. But make no mistake, When it's time to work, the work is unforgiving. If you're not farming, perhaps you're in a trade. A blacksmith? Say hello to burns, blisters, and blindness from glowing metal sparks. A tanner? That's the job where you scrape flesh off animal hides and soak them in urine. Not metaphorical urine, actual urine, collected in barrels and stirred by hand. The stench alone makes your eyes water. Fun, quirky tidbit. Some medieval towns paid people to collect urine door to door, used for leather tanning and even bleaching cloth. Yes, your neighborhood had a full-time pee collector. Back to your work. Your hands are raw. Your nails are cracked and blackened. You may be a shepherd, standing in rain all day hoping wolves don't steal your flock. You may be a cooper, endlessly hammering metal rings onto barrels while inhaling smoke. You may be a washerwoman, scrubbing linen in icy water until your knuckles split. Break time? There is none. Lunch might be a cold onion and some more crusty bread, eaten while you squat in the shade of a tree and pick grass out of your teeth. You can't afford to stop. You fall behind and your family starves. And let's not forget the hierarchy. If you're a serf, you're not just a peasant. You're legally bound to your lord's land. You can't leave without permission. You owe your lord a share of your crops, your time, and your loyalty, even if he's an incompetent fool who thinks astrology is the key to crop rotation. Your taxes are paid in chickens, grain, or days of free labor. The local reeve, a peasant turned taskmaster, makes sure you don't skimp. He carries a stick. It's not for decoration. And while you work yourself ragged, someone else is feasting on white bread, pork, and imported spices. You might catch a whiff if the wind is generous. But more likely, you'll just hear the sound of distant laughter while you dig a trench in the freezing ground. One moment you pause to rub your shoulder. It's sore, probably a pulled muscle. You think about resting, maybe sitting under a tree for 5 minutes. But then you remember what happened to that guy in the next village over who missed his threshing quota. Fined, publicly shamed. Some say he was beaten. Others say he just vanished. This kind of work isn't just physically exhausting. It's spiritually numbing. You repeat the same motions day in, day out, until you forget what your hands looked like before they were covered in grime. You can't read. You don't know how to write. You have no map of the world. No news beyond what the village gossip tells you. Your entire world is within walking distance. And your dreams? Mostly limited to, I hope I don't lose a toe this winter. There's no sense of upward mobility. You won't invent an app. You won't go viral. You won't be remembered. Your best case scenario is a peaceful death in old age, surrounded by grandchildren who are slightly less malnourished than you were. And you're probably not going to make it there, because while you're bending over for the 100th time today, a rusty nail pokes through your boot. Just a little puncture. Nothing to worry about until it gets infected, because in medieval times that could very well be the start of your goodbye tour. You limp through the rest of your workday, the sky slowly turning gold, your legs aching, your stomach growling again. And the worst part, you still have chores to do when you get home. You limp home, dragging your feet through the same mud you trudged out through this morning. The sun is dropping behind the trees, casting long shadows that stretch like dark fingers across the village. The sky's orange glow looks almost beautiful, until a gust of wind reminds you that the chill is setting in, and you still haven't eaten properly. Again, as you reach your home, if you can call the smoke-stained hut with rotting wood and a tilted door home, your mind turns to something hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, today will be different. Maybe you'll finally get to rest. But then you remember, it's time for supper, which means time to cook, which means time to light a fire. And oh yes, gather water. That means a trip to the well, or worse, the stream. The well is communal, surrounded by slippery stones and kids throwing rocks for fun. If you live in a poorer area, your only option is river water, which, by this point, has marinated all day in horse droppings, soap scum, fish guts, and probably a dead frog or two. Cheers. You manage to fill a heavy bucket and haul it back, splashing half of it onto your wool shoes. The cold soaks right in, turning your toes into soggy croutons. Inside, someone's already started a fire. That's lucky. But the smoke doesn't go up a chimney. It just floats freely through the room. Your eyes sting. You cough again. Everyone coughs. All the time. It's practically a family tradition. You get to work on supper. A turnip, some dried beans, maybe a handful of wilted greens for variety. You toss it all in an iron pot and stir with a wooden spoon so scorched it's basically a stick. It'll take an hour to soften, so you sit and wait, stomach groaning, while the smoke curls around your head like a lazy ghost. Now, let's say you get sick. Not the sniffles, real sick. Fever, dizziness, maybe a strange swelling behind your ear. What do? Call a doctor? Nope. The doctor comes to you, and that's the scary part. Your local healer arrives in a patchwork robe, carrying a sack full of herbs, a few copper tools, and a deep distrust of science. He smells like garlic and burnt wool. He examines your swollen lymph node and confidently announces, "You have a bad humor. Charming." Remember, the theory of humors dominated medieval medicine. Your body was thought to be governed by 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If you were sick, it meant your fluids were unbalanced. So the solution: balance them. How? Oh, just a bit of bloodletting. Or leeches. Or, if you're feeling adventurous, trepanation. A fun little procedure where they drill a hole in your skull to let the bad spirits out. Historians still argue whether bloodletting ever actually helped anyone, or just sped them toward the grave in a more orderly fashion. What we do know is that it remained popular for centuries. Sometimes, barbers even performed the procedure. That red and white striped barber pole? Yeah. That's from the blood and bandages they'd hang out to dry. Sweet dreams. Quirky tidbit for the night. Some medieval remedies involved eating powdered mummy. Yes, actual mummy. Ground up and sprinkled into wine. It was believed to have powerful healing properties. If you're lucky, your village is too poor to afford imported Egyptian corpse powder. Back to your infection. The healer ties a pigeon to your foot. Why? Because he believes the disease will leave your body and enter the bird. This is real. And while the pigeon stares blankly at your swollen limb, you wonder if this is how it all ends. Taken down not by war or famine, but by a foot boil and an unlucky bird. Pain relief? Best you'll get is a poultice of mashed onions and maybe a prayer whispered over your head. Anesthetic won't be around for centuries, and even the idea of cleaning wounds with alcohol is foreign to them. If you do get cut or burned, the treatment might be honey, vinegar, or just toughing it out. Infection is common. Death is casual. And don't even think about your teeth. That nagging ache in your molar? That's not going away. In fact, it's getting worse. Soon, it'll throb with every heartbeat. The solution: tooth pulling. No numbing, no sterilization, just a big pair of metal tongs, a strong arm, and the hope you don't scream too loud and disturb the cows. You sit by the fire, sore and sick, listening to the faint crunch of someone chewing something suspiciously crunchy across the room. A dog licks its paw loudly in the corner. Someone coughs. A deep, rattling cough that sounds like it came from the depths of a haunted chimney. No one says anything. What's there to say? You don't have the words for infection. You don't know about bacteria. You just know that people sometimes get sick and then disappear. Maybe tomorrow, Someone else will be digging your grave with a bent shovel and a tired sigh. You lean back, close your eyes, and try not to think about the pigeon tied to your foot. Sleep doesn't come easy when there's a pigeon tied to your foot and a toothache that feels like a blacksmith is hammering your jaw from the inside. But eventually, you doze off, only to be jolted awake by a sharp, throbbing pain. You sit up in the darkness, rubbing your jaw and quietly whimpering. You'd cry louder, but you don't want to wake the rest of the household because yes, everyone sleeps in the same room. Parents, siblings, kids, the family goat. Privacy isn't a thing. It's just one big snoring, wheezing, occasionally farting sleep pile, warmed by each other's body heat and the lingering stink of the cook fire. You tiptoe out to the edge of the bed, or rather the wooden plank with straw on top, and sit holding your face. Your mouth is on fire. The ache has climbed to your temple. You try chewing on some bark, or maybe bite down on a clove if you're lucky enough to have one. It doesn't help. You know where this is going. It's time to see the tooth drawer. In the morning, you find him sitting on a stool in the village square. He's not a dentist. There is no such profession yet. He's the local blacksmith's cousin who once saw a molar pulled out with tongs, and now he's the closest thing your town has to dental care. He doesn't wear gloves. He doesn't wash his hands. He does, however, have a rag soaked in cheap wine that he offers you to bite. It doesn't numb the pain, but it gives you something to scream into. You tilt your head back and watch as he lifts a pair of iron forceps. You can feel them slide around the aching tooth. He wiggles, twists, yanks. The pain is unbearable, white-hot, all-consuming, and then, pop, it's out. Or more likely, half of it is. He holds it up triumphantly, while the other half of your tooth remains embedded in your gums for eternity. A souvenir. You're bleeding. He tells you to bite down on a piece of cloth, but don't worry, it's only slightly dirty. The bleeding should stop. Probably. You can wash your mouth with warm water, if you can find any that doesn't come with added parasites. Historians still argue whether medieval dental care was always this barbaric. Some suggest that wealthier people had access to herbal pastes and even rudimentary toothbrushes made of frayed twigs. There are records of early mouthwashes made with vinegar and salt. But for most folks like you, oral hygiene is a prayer and a punch in the face. Fun, fringe tidbit. In some cultures during the Middle Ages, people believed toothaches were caused by tiny worms living inside the teeth. No one had ever seen these worms, of course. But that didn't stop folks from burning herbs and blowing the smoke directly into the patient's mouth to drive them out. You shudder to think what else might be living in there. You return home sore, woozy, and very much down one molar. Chewing is now a distant memory. The meal tonight, gruel again, maybe with a beet if it's your lucky day, goes mostly untouched as you try to slurp it past your swollen gum. Your family doesn't ask what happened. Everyone's had at least one tooth pulled by the time they're 15. It's just part of life. By the time you're 40, assuming you get that far, you'll be mostly toothless, gums shiny and bare, looking like you're permanently trying to whistle. You lie down again on the communal straw mattress. Your jaw still throbs, your face is warm, and you might be running a fever. But the pigeon's gone now, and you call that progress. Outside, the wind howls through the gaps in the wooden walls. Rain starts to fall, the drops tapping against the roof in uneven rhythms. You hope it doesn't leak again, but of course it will. That one spot always does. It's like your ceiling has a personal vendetta. You try to sleep. You think about the future, not in the abstract, hopeful way modern folks do. There's no 5-year plan. You don't dream of travel or a new job or going back to school. The future is more like, will we have enough firewood next week? And I really hope my toe stops turning black. There's no escape, no safety net, no insurance. One bad harvest, one infected wound, one bite from the wrong rat, and it's game over. You close your eyes and try to breathe slowly. Your nose is clogged. Your head is pounding. You can hear mice rustling near the corner of the room, nibbling at some forgotten crust. One scampers over someone's blanket. No one flinches. They're used to it. You think of your mouth again and cringe. The taste of blood is still in the back of your throat. You spit into the ashes near the fire, but it doesn't help. You lie back, defeated. You tell yourself you'll rest, that tomorrow will be better. But in medieval times, better just means you didn't die in your sleep. Morning arrives not with the soft ring of an alarm clock, but with the shrill sound of a rooster that seems personally offended by your existence. You open your eyes to a room full of breath clouds and people rustling. The fire went out hours ago, and now it's cold enough to make your joints creak. Your jaw still aches from yesterday's tooth extraction, or rather medieval mouth vandalism. You shuffle outside for some fresh air and, as usual, it smells like wet hay, wood smoke, and pig. Because, well, there is a pig, right there in the mud patch next to your front door. You greet each other silently. He's probably cleaner than you are. As you scratch your itchy scalp, you wonder why your head always feels like a squirrel's playground. Yes, lice, the ever-present medieval accessory. Everyone has them. Nobles, peasants, monks. No one is spared. You run your fingers through your tangled, greasy hair and feel little bumps. Lice eggs, lovingly referred to as nits. You sigh. Again. Here's the thing. People in medieval times didn't like being infested. They just didn't really know how to fix it. Regular bathing was discouraged, as we've covered, and head coverings only went so far. The best you could hope for was someone to sit behind you for an hour, methodically crushing the nits between their fingernails. It was both grooming and bonding, like a medieval spa day, but itchier. Quirky fact. Some people believed lice were actually a divine punishment for sin. Others claimed they helped purge bad blood from your body. So, in a roundabout way, being infested might mean you're spiritually clean. Silver linings. But it's not just lice. Oh no, there's also fleas. Your bedding is full of them. They jump, they bite, and they spread disease. Then there's scabies. Tiny mites that burrow into your skin, especially between the fingers. And if you're really lucky, ringworm, which isn't a worm, but a fungal infection that leaves angry red spirals all over your body. Perfect for when you want to look like you were cursed by a very lazy wizard. Historians still debate just how prevalent these infestations were. Some argue that many people, especially those in rural areas with access to running water like streams, practiced more hygiene than previously thought. Others say these parasites were so common they were just part of everyday life, like hunger or prayer. You return inside and glance at your clothes, the same wool tunic from yesterday. You sniff it. Bad idea. Smells like old milk, sweat, and despair. But it's the only thing you have, so on it goes. You scratch your arm absent-mindedly and wince. A rash, probably from chafing, or the fleas, or both. You head into the village, rubbing your eyes, still half asleep. Today's job is a shift in the local bakehouse, which sounds pleasant until you realize the oven is so hot it feels like your eyebrows are melting. You're sweating before you even start kneading the dough. And remember, this dough isn't your modern, fluffy Wonder Bread. It's dense, rough, and full of husks. You could throw it at someone and knock them out. The air in the bakehouse is heavy with smoke and the tang of yeast. You like the smell at first until it clings to your skin, your clothes, and your hair. You'll reek of burnt barley for the next week. During a brief moment of stillness, you scratch your scalp again and pull out something under your fingernail. It moves. You flick it away, pretending it didn't happen. The baker next to you does the same. Neither of you says a word. There's no judgment. This is just what life is. Fun fact, In some parts of Europe, it was believed that lice actually avoided the cleanest people. So, if you were infested, it meant you were blessed with humility and hard work. Cleanliness is next to godliness wasn't exactly in vogue yet. You finish your shift red-faced and dizzy. You've inhaled more smoke than air. Your hands are blistered, your shirt clings to your back, and your feet feel like they've walked across a field of pebbles. You shuffle back home, barely registering the jeers of a few boys playing near the market square. They're filthy too, throwing rocks and laughing with missing teeth. On your way back, you hear the bell of the village church. Time for evening prayer. You hesitate, your stomach growls, your knees ache. But not showing up could make people whisper. And whispers in the medieval world are dangerous. A bad reputation spreads faster than fleas. You enter the cold stone chapel and kneel on the floor. It smells like incense and old wax. The priest mutters Latin, which you don't understand. You bow your head anyway, mouthing words you've heard since childhood, hoping that today isn't the day your skin starts to turn black or your fingers go numb. Later, back home, you sit by the fire scratching your arms, your neck, your legs. Every part of you is irritated, inflamed, and raw. You find a small patch of comfort, an old cloth you once used as a pillowcase, and hold it close to your cheek. It smells like smoke and rosemary. You pretend it's fresh. Eventually, you lie down on the straw-stuffed mattress again, next to your brother who mumbles in his sleep and occasionally kicks. The pig sighs deeply from its corner. A flea bites your ankle. You slap at it half-heartedly. You close your eyes and try to imagine a world without itching. But in this world, in medieval times, peace is as rare as soap. You wake up scratching your arm so fiercely that you draw a thin line of blood. There's no time to whimper. Someone's already shouting about the cows wandering off again. You groan, swing your legs over the edge of your itchy straw mattress, and mentally prepare to chase a creature 4 times your weight while wearing shoes that don't qualify as footwear. Today is market day, which, if you're lucky, is the one time in the week you might see something different. The village square comes alive with stalls, clanging carts, and people shouting about turnips, barley, or the best sheep dung for fertilizing your fields. It's colorful, it's chaotic. It also smells like 20 different types of bad decisions. You're carrying a small basket with eggs and maybe a bit of yarn to trade. Money exists, sure, but it's not common. Bartering rules the day here. You offer 6 eggs for a hunk of smoked fish. The fishmonger eyes you, shrugs, and nods. Deal. You walk away with your prize, which you'll ration carefully over the next few days, assuming no one eats it in their sleep or the dog doesn't sneak it first. It's already buzzing with flies, but you're past the point of caring. You slap a few away and keep moving. At the center of the square, a man stands on a crate, reading out the local lord's announcements. He yells something about increased grain taxes and a new curfew. People groan, roll their eyes. No one protests. You just quietly accept that more of your hard-earned crop will be going to a castle you'll never see. Let's take a moment here to discuss class, because it's the giant armored elephant in the room. In the medieval world, you don't move up. You're born a peasant, you die a peasant. Social mobility isn't just rare, it's ridiculous. The idea that you could work hard and earn your way into wealth? Pure fantasy. Historians still argue whether peasants were truly powerless or if they had more autonomy than we think. There are examples of independent farmers, guild members, even wealthy merchants rising in status. But for most people, you stay where you were born, shoveling manure and dreaming of slightly less manure. The local lord, who owns the land you live on, by the way, might come through once a year. When he does, it's a big deal. Trumpets, horses, shiny armor. He waves from a distance while his tax collector makes direct eye contact with your soul. You don't exist as a person to him. You're a unit of labor, a number in his ledger. Back at the market, things get more interesting. Someone is being punished. You hear the jeers before you see the crowd. In the center is a wooden pillory, and a man has his head and hands locked in place. His face is red with shame, and his back already shows signs of bruising. His crime? Stealing a loaf of bread, or maybe just owing a debt. The reasons blur together. The punishment is always the same: public humiliation. People throw rotten vegetables at him. A kid kicks his shin. You look away, but you don't feel much. Empathy is a luxury. You've been hungry too. You might end up there someday. You move on. Quirky tidbit. Some towns used cucking stools, a kind of wooden chair used to dunk offenders, usually women accused of gossip or witchcraft, into a river repeatedly. The humiliation wasn't the cold. It was the message. Watch your tongue, or you're next. And then, of course, there's the stocks, the branding, and for serious crimes, execution. No trial as you'd know it today. Accused of stealing? Hope your neighbors like you. Accused of heresy? Hope the priest had breakfast. You may be called to witness a punishment. Or worse, you may be called to prove your innocence. How? Trial by ordeal. You remember the story of a man who was accused of lying and had to hold a red-hot iron bar for 10 steps. If the burn healed cleanly, he was innocent. If not, guilty. Pain equals truth. Makes sense, right? Another method? Dunking. If you floated, you were in league with the devil. If you sank, you were innocent and dead. Medieval justice wasn't just brutal, it was confusing. You spend the rest of the morning avoiding eye contact and scratching your arms. You trade for a new iron pot. It's heavier than it looks, and you carry it home with aching shoulders, only to realize it's slightly cracked. Too bad. No returns. You pass the town healer again. He waves cheerfully, completely unaware that his pigeon cure is still the subject of family jokes. Want another bird for your headache? Someone calls out. You chuckle. Kind of. Back home, it's chore time. Again. You gather firewood, milk the goat, clean out the pen. Your hands are calloused, your nails dark with dirt. You step on something sharp, again, and curse under your breath. You wonder if anyone in history has ever stubbed their toe on a turnip. Your mother calls you to help patch the roof. You climb up carefully, balancing on the uneven beams. Thatched roofs are made of straw and reeds, bound together tightly, but they don't last forever. You fix what you can, but tomorrow it'll probably leak again. Dinner is quiet. Someone burned the gruel. Again, no one says anything. You eat it anyway, chewing slowly, trying to forget the taste. It's warm. That's enough. As night falls, the market stalls close, the animals quiet down, and the world goes dark. Very dark. No streetlights, no flashlights, no glowing screens. Just firelight, candles if you can afford them, and the moon if the clouds allow it. You sit near the fire, exhausted and sore, listening to your family snore and the wind whistle through the cracks in the wall. Tomorrow will be the same. There's no weekend. There's no payday. There's no escape. Another day, another aching back. You wake before dawn because the rooster doesn't care about your REM cycle. You sit up groggily, brush straw off your face, and sigh. Your hands are already stiff before you've even touched a tool. You flex your fingers and notice the swelling in your knuckles hasn't gone down. Maybe it's just the cold. Maybe it's early arthritis. Maybe it's whatever mysterious medieval ailment is slowly turning you into a walking scarecrow. Breakfast is predictable. More gruel. Watery, gray, lukewarm. You swallow it with your eyes half closed and pretend it tastes like spiced porridge. Doesn't. You wonder if you should chew or just let it slide down your throat. Chewing feels like effort. There's a knock at the door. A loud, heavy-handed one. That's never good. You open it to see a man wearing the Lord's badge. He's come with a list and a tone of condescension. The local reeve, part overseer, part tax collector, part professional buskill. He's here for your dues. If you're a serf, this is routine. You owe a portion of your grain harvest, a chicken if you have it, and maybe a day's work repairing roads or mending fences. Today, you're being conscripted for corvée labor, unpaid service to your lord. Doesn't matter if your own thatch roof is caving in. His fence comes first. So off you go, again walking several miles to a nearby estate. You carry tools, maybe a shovel or a mallet, and join a group of equally unenthusiastic workers. You spend the entire day hauling stones to repair a section of wall no one uses and the Lord hasn't personally seen in years. He's probably busy hunting wild boar or feasting on roasted duck while you try not to crush your toes under limestone. You stop for a moment to catch your breath, and the reeve snaps at you to keep working. You mutter something under your breath. He hears it. He gives you a look that says, "Say it again, and I'll put you in the stocks." You keep moving. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly lived in a state of total oppression or if communities exercised more agency than we give them credit for. There were certainly periods of revolt, uprisings where people said, "Enough is enough." But more often, the fear of retribution kept folks in line. The system wasn't just enforced by knights and reeves. It was baked into religion, law, and daily life. Let's not forget the church. It's everywhere. Every village has a priest, every town a church, and every soul a sin tally that starts at birth. You pay tithes, yes, even more taxes, but this time to God's middlemen. That's usually 1/10 of your produce, by the way. Imagine giving away 10% of your barley while your own family eats soup that tastes like sadness. Still, the church offers something: comfort, structure, the dream of a better afterlife, which, let's be honest, is your only chance at comfort. You listen to sermons you mostly don't understand, nod solemnly, and cross yourself when prompted. Quirky tidbit: some medieval priests, especially in rural areas, were barely literate. There are stories of clergymen who couldn't even read Latin properly, delivering sermons that were more guesswork than gospel. Back at the estate, you hammer your thumb for the second time and barely hold back a scream. Your hands are filthy, blistered, and trembling. When the work finally ends, you start the long walk home, your stomach growling and your eyelids drooping. There's no lantern to guide your way, just the moon and your memory. You get home and immediately collapse onto the stool near the fire. Your mother hands you a bowl of something warm. You don't ask what it is. You eat it in silence, letting your brain shut off. Someone tells a short tale about a man in the next village who caught a fish this big. It's probably a lie. Doesn't matter. Everyone chuckles. Stories are currency. They make the bitter taste of the world a little sweeter, even if just for a minute. But not all stories are comforting. There's word of a bandit raid not far from here. A merchant caravan attacked, goods stolen, men injured. No one was killed this time, but next time, who knows? You clutch your bowl a little tighter and glance at the door. It doesn't even have a proper lock. Security in medieval times is laughable. No police, no alarm systems, no insurance. Your safety depends on walls, dogs, neighbors, and luck. If a group of raiders decides your village looks ripe for plundering, you grab a pitchfork and hope they're tired. You lie in bed later, thinking about what you'd even protect. Some turnips, a goat, a cracked iron pot? Still, it's yours, and that makes it worth fighting for. As you drift off to sleep, your muscles twitch from exhaustion. Your brain replays the day like a broken lute. Hammer, lift, walk, bow, chew, scratch, pray. Over and over. No end, no exit. You remind yourself that things could be worse. You're not in the stocks. You didn't get dunked. Your house didn't burn down. That counts as a win. You roll over. Something crunches under your blanket. A dead flea. You don't even flinch. This is just another day in the life you never chose. This morning feels different, but not in a good way. There's a tension in the air, like the village itself is holding its breath. You wake to murmurs and footsteps outside. People are whispering, and when you peek through the cracks in your wooden shutters, you understand why. A stranger has arrived. He wears a dark robe, travels on horseback, and doesn't make eye contact. Behind him, a small cart rattles along, covered in a thick cloth. The wheels creak and something about it feels wrong. You step outside to join the silent crowd forming near the well. The village elder steps forward to greet the visitor. They exchange quiet words. Then the man in black lifts the cloth covering his cart, and everyone gasps. It's a pile of bodies, wrapped in linens, bloated, discolored, flies already buzzing. A wave of nausea hits you. One by one, villagers back away, crossing themselves or murmuring prayers. This isn't a simple delivery. This is a warning. The plague is near. Suddenly, the world seems smaller, tighter. The air feels different, heavier, and you instinctively take a step back as if distance alone could protect you. But there's nowhere to run. You've heard the stories. Whole towns wiped out. Corpses lining the roads. No cure, no explanation. Just death. Fast, merciless, and contagious. The man in black is a plague doctor, or so you assume. He carries a pouch of herbs and speaks little. He wears no bird mask. That stylized image won't appear until much later in history, but he does keep a cloth soaked in vinegar tied around his face, as if that might stop the invisible threat from entering his lungs. Historians still argue whether these early protective methods, vinegar-soaked rags, sweet-smelling herbs, or lighting fires to cleanse the air, had any impact. The general consensus? Probably not. But in a world with no understanding of germs, you do what you can. Your village quickly shifts into panic mode. The elder orders everyone to clean their homes with rosemary and sage. The church bells ring hourly. Candles are lit. Prayers are constant. You're told not to shake hands, not to share bread, not to sleep too close, as if that's possible in your single-room house. You're also warned. If someone falls ill, isolate them. Build a separate hut if needed. Don't touch them. Don't weep too loudly. Grief spreads fear, and fear spreads faster than disease. You glance at your family, your little brother coughing faintly, your mother looking pale. You tell yourself it's just the cold, just tiredness, just the wind. But in your heart, you're scared. Daily life becomes even more grim. Markets are quieter. Visitors avoided. The baker closes his oven just in case. People start marking their doors with symbols of protection. A cross, a circle, a line of ash. Superstition thrives when science fails. You visit the church not for prayer, but to listen. The priest speaks of punishment. He says the plague is God's wrath for man's sins. He urges repentance. Some villagers begin flagellating themselves, whipping their own backs in public displays of sorrow. You stare, unsure whether to pity them or admire their dedication. Quirky tidbit. In certain parts of Europe, self-flagellation became a full movement during plagues. Flagellants would march from town to town, bleeding and chanting, hoping their suffering would cleanse the world. They were banned eventually, but only after people realized they were helping spread the disease. You begin to notice the changes. A neighbor's door stays shut too long. Rumors start. They've caught it, someone whispers. The whole family. You don't knock. No one does. A day later, the village men gather in silence, boards in hand. The house is sealed shut from the outside. You can't breathe. Is this what you feared all along? Not war or wolves or starvation, but something you can't see, can't fight, can't predict? You wrap a cloth around your own face, mimicking the stranger, even though it smells of old broth. You stuff herbs in your pockets. You clean more than usual, your hands, your tools, your doorway. But it might not matter. One night you hear moaning. Low, weak. It's your sister. You find her curled in the corner, forehead burning. You press your hand to her skin. It's like fire under parchment. Her eyes roll back. A black swelling appears near her neck. No, you call for help. Your father comes, holding a bucket of water. Your mother prays. Someone runs to fetch the healer, but he's already tending to 3 others. The next morning, your sister is gone. You dig the grave yourself. There's no coffin, just linen and earth. The priest says a short prayer. No hymns, no gathering, no last rites. You lower her into the ground and cover her gently. You don't cry. You can't. If you start, you might not stop. You scrub your hands with ashes and salt. You stay awake that night, staring into the dark, watching your family breathe. You try not to listen for coughs. You try not to imagine the fever creeping across their skin. You try not to wonder if you'll be next. This is life in the shadow of the plague. One day the cart might come for you. Days pass in a fog. Not the weather kind, though it is damp and cold, but the mental kind. That numb, detached state where you function, sort of, but you're not really there. You rise, you eat, you work, and you go to bed wondering if this night will be the one where you don't wake up. Your sister's absence echoes through the house louder than any spoken word. Her spot on the mattress remains empty. Her bowl goes untouched. No one dares move her shawl from the peg where it still hangs. It sways slightly when the wind pushes through the cracks. But life doesn't pause. Not in the medieval world. Grief gets about 24 hours before you're expected to return to your chores. So you do. You scrub pots, haul firewood, collect eggs. But now you do it while constantly checking your pulse. Is your throat sore? Did your knee always feel this warm? Is that a rash? A messenger arrives with news from the nearby town. The plague has claimed dozens more. Entire streets are being quarantined. Some houses burned with their dead still inside. Others abandoned, boarded shut. The walls marked with chalked crosses. In town, people wear talisman necklaces. Dried toads, coins with saints etched in them, clumps of garlic. Anything to keep death away. You consider making one yourself. Maybe a rabbit's foot, though you've never seen a rabbit with shoes, let alone accessories. Fun fact, some folks in certain regions believed carrying a packet of dried rose petals, rosemary, and angelica root would ward off illness. Others preferred more exotic ingredients, like powdered emerald or ground unicorn horn. Spoiler alert, unicorns weren't real and emeralds didn't help. Historians still debate just how much medieval people understood about disease transmission. Some writings suggest a rudimentary grasp of contagion, avoiding crowds, isolating the sick. But without germ theory, most explanations leaned on divine punishment, foul air, miasma, or astrology. And yet, somehow, you persist. You keep busy, busier than ever, because movement distracts you. Stillness is dangerous. It lets the fear seep in. You thatch roofs. You mend shoes. You even help an elderly neighbor dig a drainage ditch behind his hut. He pays you with half a loaf of dark rye bread. Stale, but you chew it like it's cake. There's talk of fleeing, of leaving the village for the forest, the mountains, anywhere the plague hasn't touched. But you've heard those stories, too. Wanderers chased out of towns, attacked on roads, or worse. Dying alone under a tree, never found, never buried. You decide to stay, not because you're brave, but because you don't know where else to go. One evening, while gathering herbs for your mother, you stumble upon a small group near the chapel. They're not praying, they're whispering, which talk. Apparently, someone saw old Maud muttering near the well. Then a goat got sick. Then a baby fell ill. A straight line is drawn between them. Just like that, Maud becomes the village's new suspect. You know her. She once gave you honey when your throat was sore. She talks to herself, sure, and smells like burnt mint, but she's kind. Still, fear doesn't care about kindness. You attend the village meeting because everyone does. The elder tries to calm the crowd, but whispers have already become accusations. People want answers. They want control over something, anything. And Maud? She's the perfect scapegoat. They say she has a devil's mark on her shoulder. They say she owns a cat that only appears during full moons. They say she cured a cough once, which now seems suspiciously effective. Someone suggests the water test. Tie her up, toss her in the river. If she floats, she's a witch. If she sinks, well, she's innocent but also very wet and dead. You want to speak up. You want to say, she's just old, but you don't, because eyes might turn to you next. You just bow your head and go home. Stomach knotted. Quirky detail. Not all accused witches were women. Some men, especially healers or hermits, were also tried and punished. But women, particularly older, unmarried ones, were far more common targets. Suspicion clings to solitude. That night, you don't sleep. You stare at the ceiling, listening to the wind. You imagine Maud alone in her cottage, holding a cup of tea, wondering if she'll be alive in the morning. In medieval times, fear doesn't just kill, it corrodes. It turns neighbors into threats and kindness into evidence. The next day, Maud is gone. No one explains. No one asks. You help bury another villager later that week. This time it's a boy, 10 years old, played with your brother, laughed too loud, ate too fast, dreamed of riding a warhorse one day. Now he's just a name spoken in whispers. The priest says, God's will. You nod, but you're not sure what that even means anymore. You spend the evening making a small charm of your own. The silly twine, a feather, a coin. But it feels like doing something, and in a time where everything is out of your hands, that's worth something. You hang it near your bed. You lie down beside it. You scratch at a bite on your neck and try not to imagine the worst. This is the rhythm now. Loss, labor, fear, repeat. But still, you're here. The village is quieter now. Not in the peaceful, sleepy way, but in the unsettling, hollow kind. Fewer voices, fewer footsteps, fewer faces you recognize. Some are sick, some fled, some, well, no one speaks their names aloud anymore. You don't realize how much noise people make until that noise vanishes. Even the animals seem subdued. The chickens cluck less. The dogs don't bark as often. Your goat gives you a half-hearted bleat when you feed it, like it too knows something's wrong. And the silence has weight, presses on your shoulders like wet wool. Still, life must go on. Because what else is there? You walk to the fields with a worn basket and a dull sickle, the blade chipped but usable. Harvest time doesn't care if your heart is broken or your joints ache. The grain won't wait, so you bend and cut, hour after hour, while your spine protests with every motion. Your hands are blistered, your knees are caked in dust, and your back feels like it's folding into itself. You pause to stretch, looking across the fields at your fellow workers. Fewer than usual. Many are coughing. Some work with bandaged hands. No one speaks. You just keep moving because to stop feels like admitting defeat. You think about the food you're harvesting and how little of it will end up in your kitchen. A portion goes to the Lord, of course, his fair share. Another portion to the church in the form of tithes. And then there's what you trade to get essentials you can't make: salt, oil, a bit of cloth. What's left? Just enough to not starve. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were better off than industrial-era factory workers. Sure, you have fresh air, technically. And yes, your time isn't dictated by a whistle or a foreman. but when your survival depends on your own hands and the weather's mood swings, it's hard to see that as a win. Lunch today is a hunk of bread and a hasty sip of watered ale. You sit under a tree, nibbling slowly, not even sure if you're hungry. Food is routine now, like breathing. Joyless, necessary. You wipe sweat from your brow with your sleeve and notice something in the sky. Smoke. Not the cooking kind. Not the hearth kind. Thicker. Blacker. Something's burning. You leap up and squint toward the village. Others do the same. A few mutter curses and start running. Your feet follow before your brain catches up. By the time you reach the edge of the village, a small house is fully ablaze. People are shouting, forming lines with buckets, though they're few and the water's less. Someone screams that the fire jumped to another roof. A neighbor cries. A child sobs. You help form the chain, passing bucket after bucket, hands slipping from soot and water. The flames roar like a living creature. Sparks rise like angry fireflies. Roof beams groan and collapse. Eventually, the fire dies, helped more by luck and the wind's mercy than the water you could spare. But 2 houses are gone. One more is half-charred. No one died miraculously, but a family now has no home. They're taken in by relatives or crammed into someone's barn. You collapse against a fence, throat raw from smoke, eyes stinging. The scent of scorched wood clings to your clothes and hair. You feel like you've aged 10 years in an afternoon. And then someone says it, bad omen, because everything is a sign in the medieval world. Fire, illness, a crow flying low. It all means something. The villagers whisper about curses, sins, witches. You shiver, not from cold but from the weight of belief pressing down on everyone. Quirky tidbit. In some regions, it was common to blame fires on dragons. Not metaphorical ones, but literal winged beasts believed to roam the skies. People swore they saw glowing eyes and flickering tails in the clouds. Others believed in fire demons who were attracted to unclean homes. You wonder if someone will suggest another trial, another scapegoat. Your eyes scan the crowd, worried they'll land on someone undeserving. Again. Later, as evening falls, you help rebuild what you can. Mostly carrying stones, clearing debris, comforting children. No one thanks you, not because they're ungrateful, but because gratitude feels useless in a world where nothing is stable. You return home filthy, hungry, and exhausted. But there's no rest. Your mother has a fever now. You touch her forehead, burning. Her hands shake. She mutters strange things in her sleep. You sit beside her, wiping her face with a damp cloth. You whisper soothing words, even though your voice trembles. You wonder, is this the plague again? Or just a cold? Is it treatable or fatal? You don't know. You can't know. And that helplessness is its own kind of agony. You call for the village healer. He arrives later, out of breath and half-drunk. He smells like vinegar and onion. He hands you a paste made of garlic and crushed beet leaves and tells you to rub it on her chest. You do it praying it helps, or at least doesn't make it worse. You spend the night half awake, watching her breathe, counting the seconds between each inhale, terrified of what the next hour might bring. Somewhere, an owl hoots. Somewhere, another fire crackles. Somewhere, someone dies. But for now, your mother lives. And that, in this world, is enough. Morning light trickles through the cracks in the wall, painting soft lines across your mother's sleeping face. She's still breathing, slower now, calmer. The fever broke sometime during the night. You don't smile, but the tension in your chest loosens slightly, just enough to let in one shaky breath of relief. Your limbs ache from sitting on the floor all night. Your back cracks when you stand, but you don't complain. Compared to what might have happened, the pain feels like a blessing. Still, there's no time to celebrate. There's no such thing as a day off here. You check on the rest of your family. Your brother is outside chasing a chicken. Your father is sharpening a scythe, jaw clenched as always. The house smells faintly of garlic and wet wool. You push open the door and step into the morning chill, the air fresh and earthy with dew. For a moment, it's almost peaceful. Then you remember you're behind on firewood. The Lord Steward is expected tomorrow, and if your house doesn't have its quota of firewood prepared and stacked neatly, you'll owe a fine, or worse, a labor penalty. Because in medieval times, not being poor enough is never an excuse for not being poor and productive. So you grab the axe and make your way to the woods, following a trail you've taken 100 times. The trees are damp, the forest floor soft underfoot. Birds chirp somewhere above, and a squirrel darts across your path. For a brief second, it all feels like a fairy tale. Then the axe head flies loose from its handle and narrowly misses your shin. You mutter something that would get you a stern glare from the priest and retrieve it from a bush. The handle's splintered. You'll need to fix it before continuing, which means walking back, grabbing tools, and losing precious daylight. You fix the axe with a strip of leather and some stubbornness. Then it's back to chopping, stacking, hauling, and wiping sweat from your brow with a sleeve so filthy it probably qualifies as a biohazard by modern standards. Historians still argue about just how self-sufficient medieval peasants were. Some believe most rural families had the skills and tools to maintain everything from their homes to their clothes and food. Others argue that bartering for services, blacksmithing, weaving, etc., was much more common than we think. Either way, you didn't wait for help. You couldn't afford to. By midday, your arms are jelly, your back is on strike, and your stomach reminds you that food is also a necessity. You eat the last of the turnip soup. Cold, slimy, bland. You slurp it anyway. Back in the village, you spot the old man who sells beeswax candles. He's hunched over, mumbling to himself, but you know he's harmless. You trade a few onions for a stubby, half-used candle. Light, you've learned, is worth its weight in eggs. You pass the blacksmith's forge and pause. Sparks fly inside as the smith hammers away. The sound is rhythmic, almost musical. He nods at you, one of the few people who still makes eye contact lately. You smile briefly. Quirky detail. Blacksmiths were considered a bit magical in some communities, because they worked with fire and metal, elements seen as both sacred and dangerous. People believed they had power beyond their trade. Some even thought they could heal the sick or curse enemies with a special nail or a horseshoe turned the right way. You continue down the path and spot a group of children playing a strange game involving sticks, stones, and shouting. It makes no sense, but their laughter cuts through the tension like a blade. You stop to watch, letting their joy soak in like warmth from the sun. Then the game turns to a fight, as games often do. One boy throws a rock, another cries, and a third calls him a worm-hearted toad. It's oddly poetic. An adult steps in, pulls ears, and the crowd disperses. Childhood in the Middle Ages. Brief bursts of joy, often followed by bruises. You head home again as the sun begins its descent, painting the sky with streaks of gold and gray. Your boots are soaked through. Your shoulders scream, but the firewood stack is ready. At least you won't be fined tomorrow. You check on your mother again. She's awake, sipping broth. Her eyes are clearer. She even smiles. You dare to smile back. Dinner is thin barley stew, better than nothing. You eat slowly, savoring the texture even though it tastes like boiled dust. Your father talks about the upcoming harvest festival, a rare day of games, music, and shared food. You nod, pretending to care. You've learned not to get your hopes up for festivals. There's still work, just in fancier clothes. But at least it's work with music. Later, you sit by the fire, watching the flames dance, the shadows flicker. You fiddle with your candle stub. You think about the people you've lost, the days that blurred together, and the small, hard-won victories. Like your mother sitting up, like your sister's shawl still untouched, like your own breath in your lungs. This life is brutal, but it's also yours, and somehow you're still here. The morning sun is unusually warm as it spills across the thatched roofs and muddy paths. You stretch your arms, slowly, carefully, trying to chase the stiffness from your joints. Today is the harvest festival, or at least the closest thing to joy your village gets all year. You don't exactly leap out of bed, but there's a quiet hum in the air, the kind that says something different is about to happen. A temporary break in the unchanging rhythm. And let's face it, you need this. You help with morning chores faster than usual. The animals are fed, the firewood is stacked, and your hands are only half covered in soot and straw by the time you change into your good tunic. It's just slightly less tattered than the usual one, with only 2 visible patches and a button that almost works. Style is subjective. In the village square, people are gathering. Baskets of apples and late summer vegetables are arranged on makeshift tables. A few fiddlers tune their instruments, and children dart between legs, giggling. Someone has even baked sweet bread, a rare delicacy topped with honey and walnuts. You nearly tear up just smelling it. There's dancing, if you can call it that. A group of young men and women circle each other awkwardly, clapping in rhythm and stepping over invisible lines in the dirt. You're pulled in whether you like it or not. A neighbor grabs your arm and suddenly you're twirling, laughing, sweating, dizzy. But for once, not from fever or fear. And for a brief hour or two, you forget about plague, taxes, broken roofs, and missing faces. Instead, you feast. The food isn't extravagant, but by your standards, it's a banquet. Roasted root vegetables, thick slices of brown bread, dried fruit soaked in cider, and somehow cheese. Glorious, tangy, melt on your tongue cheese. You savor every bite like it's your last meal. It might be. Someone starts singing. Others join in. The lyrics make no sense. Something about a sheep, a fox, and a missing hat. But the melody is infectious. You tap your foot, sway slightly, and even hum along. Historians still argue about how central festivals were to peasant life. Some say they were a critical morale booster, moments of relief in a harsh cycle of survival. Others argue that they were tightly controlled by the church or the local lord, serving more to reinforce hierarchy than to encourage freedom. Either way, you'll take it. The local priest makes an appearance, giving a brief sermon about gratitude and humility. Everyone nods solemnly, then returns to dancing. He doesn't seem to mind. Even the priest eats 3 pieces of sweet bread before excusing himself to tend to the candles. Quirky detail. During some harvest festivals, villagers would make a corn dolly, a figure woven from the last sheaf of grain harvested. It was often dressed up and placed on the hearth to ensure a good harvest the following year. In some areas, they'd even marry the corn dolly to the plow. As the day wears on, the music gets louder, the cider flows freer, and the games begin. There's log throwing, apple bobbing, and a race that involves sacks and a lot of falling down. You lose spectacularly, but no one cares. Losing is part of the charm. You sit beside the fire pit later, your belly full and your limbs aching in that good way. You watch sparks fly upward into the evening sky, disappearing into stars. For a moment, the world feels normal, better even. You start to think, maybe things are turning. Maybe this long nightmare of sickness and fear is ebbing. Maybe your village will rebuild. Maybe you'll have more days like this. Then you overhear something. A traveler from the south arrived this morning. Quiet, pale, coughing. No one says the word out loud, but everyone hears it. Plague. Again. The warmth inside you starts to chill. The fear creeps back in, slow and steady. People exchange glances. Conversations quiet. Someone snuffs a candle too hard, and the smoke curls upward like a warning. You finish your cider, stand up slowly, and dust off your tunic. You walk home with a knot in your stomach, heavy with cider, bread, and the return of dread. By the time you tuck into your straw bed that night, your mind is racing again. Should you isolate? Who was near the traveler? Did he touch the bread? Was he dancing? You close your eyes and pretend none of it happened. Just for a minute. Just long enough to fall asleep to the memory of laughter, music, and the taste of honey on your tongue. Tomorrow, reality returns. But tonight, just tonight, you let yourself dream of peace. You wake to the sound of coughing. Not yours. Not your mother's. Outside. It's early, too early. Mist still clings to the edges of the fields. You rise slowly, the aches from yesterday's dancing reminding you that joy also comes at a physical cost. But the cough comes again, sharper this time. Choked, desperate. You peer through the window slats. A man stumbles through the lane, leaning on the side of a house, one arm pressed tight against his ribs. His face is ashen, and there's a faint trail of something dark near his mouth. He collapses just beside the well. The silence is instant. No one rushes forward. No one screams. Everyone sees him and everyone freezes. You hold your breath. Literally. Someone shouts for the priest. Another for the reeve. A third just mutters a prayer under their breath. The man groans, weakly lifting his head before falling limp again. The dread that has loomed for weeks finally enters the village gates once more. You step back from the door, pressing it closed. Your father locks it behind you. Your mother whispers a prayer. Your brother stares with wide eyes. This is it. Again. The steward doesn't arrive that day to collect dues. The smith doesn't open his forge. Even the chickens stay unusually quiet, sensing the shift in the air. The harvest festival already feels like something from a different lifetime. Within 2 days, the man is dead. By day 5, 3 more villagers follow. This time, there's no attempt to hide it. People don't sugarcoat the word. It's not fever, or illness, or bad air. It's the plague, and it's here to collect its second harvest. The village elder calls for action. Quarantine huts are built hastily near the edge of the woods. Those who can avoid the square. Those who can't try to keep their distance. Families light herbs at their doors. Some even burn clothing. You and your family reinforce the door. You stuff fabric into the window cracks. You begin eating dried food sparingly, unsure how long this will last. Your movements become calculated. Every trip to the well, every brush of a shoulder, every meal eaten with silent gratitude. Your mother insists on prayers. Morning, midday, and night. Your father sharpens a knife, not for fighting, but for trimming branches into makeshift spears. You don't ask what for. Your world shrinks to the size of your house and your breath. Historians still debate whether medieval quarantine measures helped or hurt communities. Some argue that isolation slowed the spread. Others believe that the panic of fleeing towns actually accelerated it. What's clear is this: fear changed behavior far more than knowledge ever did. You start to lose track of the days again. One bleeds into the next like water soaking into cloth. Sometimes you hear cries from the outskirts. Other times, worse, you hear nothing. And yet, somehow your family remains untouched. One morning, you take a careful walk around the outskirts, alone, wrapped in layers of cloth, herbs stuffed into every fold. You find the corn dolly still hanging from the elder's hut, untouched. Beside it, a line of pebbles and ash meant to ward off spirits. It hasn't worked for most. You stop at the small gravesite, More mounds have appeared. Simple ones. No names carved, just rocks, bundles of dried lavender, and occasionally a favorite item buried with the body. A wooden spoon, a doll, piece of ribbon. You whisper a few names. Ones you remember, ones you miss, ones you know are gone. Then you return home. Quirky tidbit. In some villages, people would bury eggs under doorways as a protection charm. Others painted crosses on their animals. And in one remote hamlet, they tied bread soaked in wine to trees as offerings to ward off sickness. None of it worked, of course, but in a world without answers, ritual becomes its own medicine. Weeks pass. The coughing fades. The crying stops. The silence returns. But this time, it's different. You step outside one evening to find the air strangely sweet. The sun is setting slowly, painting everything in warm gold. A few villagers are out, cautiously moving around, testing the waters of normal life. It's not over, but it feels lighter. The smith reopens. The reeve comes around again, less stern, more subdued. The priest delivers sermons in a quieter tone. You share bread with your neighbors, even if you do so with distance. A child laughs again, chasing a dog through the village path. And you survive. Somehow, despite everything, you're still standing. You tend to your small garden, you gather firewood, you dry herbs by the window. You carry grief in one hand and hope in the other. Both are heavy, but you don't drop either. You even find yourself smiling sometimes. Not wide, not often, but enough. Enough to believe you might make it through the next storm. And the one after that. Because while you would never choose to live in the medieval world, where death knocks weakly, warmth is rare, and happiness fleeting, you've learned something vital. Survival isn't just endurance. It's ritual, humor, grief, bread, whispered stories, dirty fingers, stubborn faith, and dancing in a crooked circle once a year with the same people you might bury come winter. Is waking up sore and grateful in equal measure. And if you ever find yourself back here again, in this muddy, hungry, sacred mess of a life, you'll know. You might not last a day, but if you do, you just might last a lifetime. Word count, 1,105. Wind down, 300 words. The fire crackles low now, its light soft and flickering like the last moments of a candle's flame. You lean back, eyes heavy, limbs still. The world outside your window, muddy paths, wooden walls, quiet stars, fades gently into shadows. It's been a long journey tonight. You've walked cold mornings in straw shoes. You've tasted watery soup and danced beneath crooked skies. You've buried names whispered in silence, watched seasons pass without mercy, and still found small, sacred moments of peace amid the sorrow. And now your breath slows, your body settles, your mind loosens its grip on time. This story, like all others, doesn't really end. It simply quiets. The village fades into mist. The fear, the fever, the firewood, all grow distant, like the echo of footsteps long since taken. The thatched roofs blur into soft clouds. The stone walls melt into dreams. You're warm now, safe. And though you've just lived through what no one should, though your hands are calloused and your heart heavier than it once was, you rest knowing that you survived. Not because of luck, but because somehow you endured. So let go now. Let the night fold gently around you, like a blanket passed down through generations. Let the sound of soft earth, crackling fires, and distant church bells guide you to sleep. You're not in the Middle Ages anymore. You're right here, warm, breathing, safe, and very, very loved. Good night.